Hello folks, let's dig into this week's delicious classic tale, The Lunchbox, which succeeds in hitting all the right taste buds. Ela, Nimrat Kaur, a neglected housewife, and Mr. Saajan Fernandes, I Irrfan Khan, a widowed office worker nearing retirement, communicate through handwritten letters and home-cooked meals.
कल खाली डब्बा भेजने के लिए आपका शुक्रिया। वैसे वो खाना मैंने अपने हस्बैंड के लिए बनाकर भेजा था।
The debut feature from Indian director Ritesh Batra is a romance that takes place in Mumbai, but its style is more Hollywood than Bollywood, and old Hollywood at that.
कुछ घंटों के लिए सोचने लगी कि दिल का रास्ता वाकई पेट से होकर जाता है।
On the other side of town, Ela takes her upstairs neighbor's advice and starts preparing extra special lunches for her cold fish spouse at work, hoping it could kickstart his interest. However, the usually flawless lunch couriers make a mistake, and rather than delivering to her hubby, the lunchbox goes to Mr. Saajan Fernandes. As the lunch tins are licked clean and her cold-hearted hubby, Rajiv, doesn't say a word, Ela realizes her carefully prepared meals went to someone else. So she puts a note in one of the compartments and receives a rather cool reply.
आंटी, डब्बा वापस आया है और खाली आया है, लेकिन अपना चिट्ठी का जवाब आया है।
Mr. Fernandes is smitten, first with the food, truly mouth-watering to see, and then by Ela's notes accompanying each meal.
देशपांडे आंटी हमारे घर के ऊपर वाले फ्लैट में रहती हैं।
Dear Ela, the chili was a bit on a higher side.
Two people trapped in dead-end existences develop a pen-pal friendship with a faint chance of escaping with one another. Ritesh Batra manages to find balance as he adds judicious amounts of humor, especially in the form of Ela's upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Deshpande.
सारे मसाले डाल दिए हैं? ना आंटी, लगता है मैं कुछ भूल गई हाँ।
He also subtly establishes differences in social groups, from Sajan's Christian neighborhood to Ela's Middle East Hindu community, revealing the crushing isolation for a young wife and mother trapped in a loveless marriage and without a job to get her out of the house.
लेकिन सिर्फ किस्मत से नहीं चलेगा, महंगाई बहुत बढ़ गई है।
Batra's understanding of visuals in collaboration with DP, director of photography, Michael Simmons, results in a meaningful use of space, such as the way the multi-stacked lunchbox sits at the far end of Sajan's desk, a conspicuous tower separated from him and his paperwork. Even more important for composition and character, early scenes of Sajan's commute have him in the middle of the packed train cars, clearly hemmed in by society, while later he is shifted to a space by the open window, allowing him to breathe in the possibilities opening up before him. As crowded as India, the chances of finding your perfect match are 1,000,000,000 to 1. But for urban workers in Mumbai, a mode of miraculous matchmaking is as close as their lunchbox. Batra excels in the documentation of a rare and unexplained glitch in the Dabba Wala network. The stackable stainless steel dishes of Ela's food arriving on Mr. Fernandes's desk. That's brilliant.
इस कंट्री में टैलेंट की कोई वैल्यू नहीं है, हाथ में जादू होता है सर।
For 35 years, without error or complaint, Mr. Fernandes has plowed through endless stacks of folders, keeping accounts with a ruler and a pencil. But now something has changed for sure, as he is receiving Ela's amazing curries. Both Ela and Sajan are telling each other about their troubles and their pasts.
सुबह वो ऑफिस चले गए और मैं देशपांडे आंटी के साथ खाना बनाने लग गई।
Sajan is drawn out of his funk when he is asked to mentor an overeager young assistant, Shaikh, an orphan who is primed to replace him.
ट्रेनिंग शुरू करें सर?
अभी तो लंच का टाइम है।
The story is a smooth blend of ethos and comedy, the latter provided by Best Supporting Actor nominee Nawazuddin Siddiqui as Sajan's eager co-worker. Rebuffing him at first, Sajan ends up befriending Shaikh, an orphan who subsists on a few pieces of fruit at lunch and an inexhaustible supply of positive thinking.
सर, आप मेरे साथ चलिए। मेरे घर पे।
Meanwhile, Ela suffers from her busy husband's indifference and begins to suspect that he's having an affair.
हेलो, आपको कुछ बताना है. मेरे हस्बैंड का अफेयर चल रहा है.
The awakening of her suspicion is wordlessly conveyed in one of many scenes in which Mr. Batra uses everyday objects and actions to convey emotion and meaning. Batra is fortunate in having cast Kaur and Khan as his leads. She has a sensual grace and conveys longing without getting all gloopy on us. The late Irrfan Khan was well known to Western audiences for films such as The Namesake, Jurassic Park, and Life of Pi. And he was simply one of the best all-time Indian actors. He could convey more with a slightly raised eyebrow or the droop of a lip than most performers can achieve utilizing their entire bodies or a dialogue.
तुम्हारा कोई सऊदी का ODP का फाइल नहीं है. These are government records. Do you understand?
In the after hours, Mr. Fernandes smokes and dozes and watches old videos of comedy shows his wife loved. There is no mystery in his life. He enjoys giving Ela advice about her troubles. He tells her that having another child might rescue her marriage.
Why don't you have another child? Sometimes having a child can help a marriage.
But he has no illusions about his own. There is another brilliant scene where Mr. Fernandes is having dinner in Sheikh's house and suddenly he introduces his girlfriend. This is the epitome of acting, folks.
लेकिन मेरा गर्लफ्रेंड है.
आपकी?
Ela.
मुझे पता था सर. डब्बे में रोटी में चिट्ठी.
In the very next scene, Sheikh reluctantly asks Mr. Fernandes to attend his marriage and he finally agrees to attend the young man's wedding as the sole member of his entourage.
छोड़ गया सर.
The questions that override everything else in the lunchbox are: what do we work for? And what do we live for? What makes the lunchbox so much more than a gimmickry romance is that the answers to those questions don't sync up.
कभी-कभी गलत ट्रेन भी सही जगह पहुंचा देती है. देखते हैं.
It takes a good job to afford a satisfying life, but a good job requires so many hours of work that there's no time left to enjoy what it affords. What's left are the fleeting pleasures, the smell of cardamom, a fondly remembered old song, and a few quiet minutes of reading at midday. Saajan and Ela soon realize that they might never catch the same train. Eventually, they start making plans to run off together to Bhutan, all the while unsure if they're just sharing a mutual daydream, if they are ready to spend their respective lives. Their relationship becomes an epistolary romance of sorts. The question, of course, is, will they eventually meet?
आपको वो कूलर कैफे पता है? माटुंगा में मेरा फेवरेट. कल वहाँ मिले.
As both of them are at a stage in their lives where their desires and ideals have evolved. Ela is only around 30 years old, while Saajan gets called uncle.
Uncle, आप बैठिए ना please.
This very day in the life of Saajan Fernandes justifies his dilemma, as he considered himself unfit for Ela and decided to watch her in a cafe from a distant corner.
I don't know when I became old. Maybe it was that morning. Maybe it was many mornings ago.
The late Irrfan Khan had an extraordinary range and chameleon-like presence, and he nailed Saajan's spare melancholy with a deadpan delivery that shifts between droll and downhearted. Lovely Kaur is a radiant presence, matching Khan's underplaying and getting the most out of tiny shifts of expression that register beautifully in close-ups. As Mr. Saajan Fernandes leaves the city, we come to know Ela was there at the same hour, right at his table, came to see him in his office but found Sheikh instead.
साजन फर्नांडिस.
वो तो चले गए. मतलब नौकरी छोड़ के चले गए.
Some stories have no closure, and this delicious lunchbox is no different. It is an endearing observation of the spiritual, life-revitalizing powers of both food and communication. As Saajan explains to Ela, you let me into your dreams, and I want to thank you for that. And it's this spirited generosity that allows the film to avoid the trappings of a more conventional, feel-good narratives. That's all, folks. Thank you for watching.